Hello and welcome everybody to this episode of Dancing with Magic. I have with me here the beautiful Tara Lee. She has been somebody that's been in my world for probably the last couple of months now. And some of the stuff that she's had to say has really swelled me off into these beautiful concepts of delving into new parts of my own personality, my own experience as this human being living this experience. And one of the ones, and I'm definitely attributing you to this in my book, like there's going to be parts in my book about you. But one of the things that you said early on when I first met you was, we are our ancestors' wildest dreams. And for me, that has just stemmed off into so many different like pinging type moments of going, oh, it's this, oh, and it's this, and oh, and it's this, and it's all of these things in the same thing. And I'd love to talk about this even more with you if you're open to it.
Absolutely. That just like I had like tears just like pop through my little watery eyes. Thank you. And you know what, that statement, it's so interesting that you bring that statement up, because I remember there's a few project grants and things that I've written over the years in terms of One Voice, which is a project that I have that's targeted at sexual abuse. And it speaks straight to that, you know, our traumas, our emotional pains and discomfort, it's not just something that we get to blame ourselves for, and it's not about blame, but it is something that's been passed through. And when we are our ancestors' wildest dreams, that means that we're at this pivotal point in this modern day evolving world, that the revolution is actually within us. And we just get to continue to choose that. And I wholeheartedly believe on a spiritual, emotional and physical level that our ancestors are like our greatest cheerleaders, going yes, because that's what evolution is, you know.
Yeah. As we're talking about this, I'm just reminded of a conversation that I had with one of my clients in a program that I ran a little while ago. And one of the things that she mentioned was that for her mum, when she got married, like that was the end of her working life, because in that generation, like getting married meant that you couldn't have a job anymore.
Yeah, it was like a full stop.
Yeah, it was it. It's like you're getting married, so therefore there's no more of this. And just her now stepping into this space of wanting to create an income for herself, going, oh, there's some edges around this, because my mother wasn't allowed to. Like it literally was illegal for her to do that at that time. And, you know, again, just dancing with this idea of we are our ancestors' wildest dreams. Like some of the things that we get to live in this life, they could never even comprehend would even be available to us. And for me, it's just like this magic that we get to explore and delve into, but also clear all of the old stories that are behind us about what we can and we can't do, and what we're allowed to have and what we're not allowed to have. And this healing sort of story around all of that as we start to embrace the newness that it's kind of like the frontier for a lot of these things for us, doing things that they never even dreamed were even possible.
Right. And it's not to say that they didn't have the idea or the connotation, and they may have even planted the seed, and that's why we are where we are. But that's something I'm extremely passionate about, is the oppression of women over lifetimes, and not making that wrong or bad, just witnessing that, you know, we are living in a really privileged environment right now as women, and we can look to the outskirts and say that we're still not equal and all of these different things. But the truth of the matter is like we've evolved so much, and we get to continue to evolve even more. And you know, when we look at things like the mother wound as an example, it's exactly what you were talking to with your client. It doesn't have to be this big, audacious, deep trauma that some of us do have to work through. It's also the things that, so my mum didn't had this idea, but because she became a mum, she lost her self-identity, and she was just known as the mother archetype, but it wasn't fully true for her. So within her body, she held resentment. She was unsure who she really was. She wasn't grounded in what her values were, etc. And therefore that rage and resentment was brought through as a projection in her parenthood. And it's not blaming her for that, because she had zero resources to be anything else. It's seeing that now we're living in a different time, and our voices may shake, and it feels really unfamiliar. And I know for me, one of the things outside of some of the bigger things between me and my mum and my mother line is that my mum used to say to me, even when I was a little girl, like, where do you get these wild, crazy dreams from? And I have full reverence and respect that my mum worked so hard our entire life and continues to be in business and has never quitted or not done what she felt called to do. However, it's still within a framework. So anything beyond that of, you know, a cleaning business or a fitness center gymnast or something that fitted in a box, she was like, you're nuts. You're absolutely nuts. You're bonkers. You've gone wild. Why can't you just go and do this? It doesn't feel right. Yeah. And so we've got to untangle where our beliefs, limiting beliefs, have actually come from, and then say to ourselves, okay, cool. Is that mine? Or is it actually somebody else's? And even if it is mine, am I ready to let that go? Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
It's pretty cool.
It is really cool. So many things were just coming up for me then. I was like, oh, this and this and this. So one of the things that I want to touch on is just this this concept that I see that's out there in some of these areas where we're talking about the feminine, is that it's almost like we're also saying that the masculine is always bad. And having sons, this is kind of the dance that I'm doing with, you know, trying to share to my girls that they can have all that they want without making my sons bad.
Amen. I'm with you on that. Yeah.
And so I think that it's about all of us being empowered together, but recognizing that each party has their own stuff. Like there's a crap load of stuff that's been pushed upon men that's not healthy and not whole, and doesn't lead them to being, you know, beautiful masculine energies. But at the same time, we also look at this space of what's happening for us as females and what's been passed down for us as women, and one doesn't negate the other. Actually, both get to be healed and both get to be well, and we get to lift up both.
Exactly. And that's something that I'm extremely passionate about, because and when we, you know, we move into an area where, yes, my work is predominantly with women, I don't not take male clients, and the male clients that I do have, generally it leans into working in the same areas, which I always think is so damn beautiful. But I think what's really important is that we as women, and this is a bold statement, but I believe it to be true, have become so masculine in how we have chosen to strive and succeed. And that was definitely my framework. And it came from a fear mentality that I needed to success and tick XYZ in my corporate environment and go to uni and do this and do that. And it was driven by like survival and validation and see me, I can meet you men here. Whereas when we integrate as women our feminine and heal our inner feminine woundings and nourish our inner mother, then we're giving permission to men on the other spectrum to embrace their own inner feminine and create a safe environment to receive their emotions. And from my experience personally, which is why I'm so passionate about the polarization and the harmony of both, is that when I reflect on my childhood, which obviously I've done a lot to be in this work, my dad is divine feminine. He was the nurturing, creative, inspired, holding space for unfiltered conversation. Whereas my mum was extremely structured, emotionally not necessarily available. She ticked all the boxes and nailed it, but in terms of her true essence, didn't really allow herself to welcome that in. Whereas my dad was, I've never met a man who cries like my dad, and I find it the biggest permission slip for men to see other men, you know, free in their creativity and emotions. And when we allow and we remember that we're actually both, yes, we're predominantly female and we have a female body, but we are masculine and feminine, and both are required to be harmonized so that we can heal together.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, because I think for me, my own personal journey moving forward, one of the biggest elements was actually embracing my masculine, because I was surrounded by a lot of information that said women have to be this and this and this, and you have to be gentle and meek and kind, and you're not allowed to have powerful thoughts and have, you know, fire or, you know, big energy. You're not allowed to have those things because women have to be this. And it's probably a bit of both, that my feminine was being really suppressed, but also my masculine was also being suppressed, and actually giving myself permission to actually be anything other than submissive and be quiet and be any of those things, like, just was the game changer for me to go, actually, no, there's this part of me that really is masculine and is really fiery and can do all these things. And as I embraced that part for me, I then found my flow in that feminine type energy, where I was like, oh, now this is where I can actually be like loving and kind and gentle, because it's coming from truth now, versus it's coming from, I have to be this way because that's the rules of our society, or the rules of, the community that I'm in at the time. Like, it's this dance between the two of them that kind of actually allows you to be more free and actually come back to who you are.
And it's consistent, right? In the sense of, like, we're not bipolar, but actually as women, we're all of it. And over time, it's been conditioned that, to have that divine inner masculine, or that mature masculine that does have ideas, and you couldn't be in business if you weren't embracing your divine masculine. That's really required. That's the riverbank to your river. And we were conditioned to some point across time to don't be too loud, don't be too much. And then on the other spectrum of that, we're meant to do X, Y, Z, but that doesn't feel real, when in actual fact, we're all of it. And there's nothing wrong. We don't have bipolar. We're not mentally dysfunctional. We actually season and cycle through all of it, because that's what makes us human beings energetically, right? It's fascinating. And it's all required, because you can sit with your child and nurture them and sit there for hours and hold them in your arms. And then you can get up and create your next project, jump on a live, structure your day, and be all the things.
Absolutely. I love what you're saying there, because I remember probably reasonably early on in my business journey, I had a mentoring session with, so she was female, but she had very masculine energy about rules about how business was meant to be. And I was explaining to her, I've got 7 children, we're homeschooling, I'm doing work at this time, and then I'm doing school at this time, and then I'm doing this at this time. And like, my day is, bits and pieces. Like, I'm out with my family, but then, I'm coming in and I'm working with a client, and then I'm back out and we're out gardening and we're doing all of these things. And she just couldn't get her head around how I could have a thriving business and have my life be like that, because that's not how business runs. That's not how business is meant to be. You have to do it this way. And it was so interesting just to watch her framework in front of me. And for me, it was that moment of going, oh, that's right. There are still people that think like this. There's
Yeah.
I think it has to be this way. I'd moved so far away from it that I'd forgotten that that's how people still think the rules are. And I'm like, oh my gosh, those rules don't even apply to me. Like, if those rules were rules that I had to follow, I wouldn't have the children that I have. I wouldn't have the, flourishing garden that I have. I wouldn't have the homeschooling that I have, but I also wouldn't have this beautiful work that I get to do in the world, because I would have gone, well, I can't meet those rules, so I can't have the thing.
And that's feminine, right? Because you've integrated both to trust.
Yeah.
That underneath all of that is this level of trust that, yep, this is where I'm going, this is why I'm doing this, and it doesn't have to be like that. And you find a lot too, like working with high profile women in the corporate environment, that always element of structure does create high levels of overwhelm, anxiety, and depression, because there's no space for their free spirit and creativity to be welcomed into their world. And that's what leads to burnout.
Exactly. I absolutely agree with you there. Absolutely.
And why mental health statistics have risen so much in, say, my mother's generation, because there was this oppression of their free-spirited nurture creativity, because that's a time where women needed to start working just as much as the men, but then they were also completing all the mother roles, because that was what the mother did, right? And my mum, when I was a kid, oh my God, that woman was a legend. She ran this business, and my parents both ran this business, and then my dad had his business. So she would drop us at school, go home in her lunch break, cook our dinner, pick us up from school, take us to her workplace. She owned a wellness center, fitness center, and we would stay there. Then she would take my brother to soccer in between teaching classes and running the front desk. I went to dancing 6 times a week. I never missed a beat. She made sure I did everything that I wanted to do. And then we would have a shower. She'd put us to bed. she'd go to bed and she'd start the next day. That was her everyday life. Our house was immaculate. Our clothes were washed and ironed. There was nothing that was missed. There was dust nowhere. Where was there room for her? Like, where was there room for her to truly know herself? I don't remember her ever doing anything for herself. And I believe we're in this time now where we're inviting like that inner nourishment in, not because we're selfish, but because it matters. It matters to the evolution of all humans that we know who we are, so that we continue to create clarity as awakened human beings on the planet.
Beautiful. And for me, one of the things that I often am saying to my clients was the biggest gift that that I actually gave to myself was to just go, actually, you know what? You're amazing.
You are amazing, by the way. I was going to interrupt you before. Damn straight, lady. 7 kids, homeschooling, thriving business. You rock.
But it was this, I did all those things, like not all of those things, I definitely didn't do my kids in order to like go check I'm amazing. But, there were things that I did on top of that were like, no, I've got to prove to the world that I'm amazing. And so, but what I was saying was that, one of the biggest gifts that I gave to myself, it's probably about 3 years ago now, that I just went, you know what? You're just amazing. You are so amazing. And it is a privilege to spend time with me. Like I gave that gift to myself of going, it's a privilege to spend time with me because I'm so amazing and my time is so valuable and my worth is so deep that it's a privilege to spend time with me. And because I can sit in that, I can then go, it's such a privilege to spend time with you.
Yeah.
And it's a privilege to be around you and listen to your wisdom and your beautiful stories and connect and engage in these conversations. But at first, it had to start with me giving it to me. And it was one of these really interesting things where I had to dance with this. People thinking she's up herself.
Yeah.
She's completely up herself. Like
who does she think she is?
Yeah, exactly. And dancing with that and going, you know what? I don't care what you think about me. I just know that I'm amazing, and it's a privilege to spend time with me because I'm a human being and I have breath in my lungs, and there's nothing else that has to come on top of that.
And that's such a divine, luscious space to be. And I was saying to a friend last night, and I'm going to say it all the time, is through my work, I've always said to my clients, like, I'm not here or in this space with you to heal you. I am a space holder who is, passionate and has a whole bunch of tools in her toolkit here. But more than that, my intention in this session or in this group is that you see that you are who you've been looking for, because this can sometimes be a concept people really struggle to digest, right? But you just explained it so beautifully that no one can actually love you past the level you love yourself. It starts with you. And when I know for me, when I think back about the lineage of women that I was born into, or anyone around you, right? Like, we might go out seeking validation and we want them to love us, but that's coming from something we haven't given ourselves first. And it's so damn important. I love that you said time, because time is one of my love languages. I love the love languages. So in order to be an embodiment of that, then time with myself is crucial to my well-being. Like, it's something that I need to schedule each week. Like, just sacred time with Tara. Yeah, just to sit and meditate, no interruptions. I might go buy myself some flowers or something because I love those too, but time, because that's a love language. And then if I can give it to myself through myself, I'm not going out to be with other people asking them to fill my teacup because it's already full. Yeah.
And it's really interesting that you mentioned the love languages there, because I've danced with this a little bit as well. The first time I did it, I was like, oh, my love language is time. And I hate people who want to buy it from me, because that was, one of my mother sort of spaces was that she'd spend money instead of time with me. And like, it totally offended me. Like, you can't buy me. But then also,
I hear you, sister.
As I've moved forward with my own progression, I realized it's also touch. And I have avoided touch because I didn't want her to touch me.
Wow. Okay. That's beautiful. That's huge awareness. Did she want to touch you?
She did. Yes. Yeah. Like, I remember, like, it's, trying to kiss me, and I was like, oh,
yeah.
So I avoided touch, even like with my husband. Like, we had touch, of course, we've got 7 kids. But it was different as opposed to like just always just being
A
loving.
surrender
Yeah. And so I
of
love
control.
how it grows and it evolves as we move forward and we peel back those layers of the onion and connect with ourselves even more. And, we get to heal all those parts of us that have been, suppressed and shut down and kind of wounded along the way.
Mm-hmm. And I can resonate too from like a different space, because I also believe each peel of that onion comes at a relevant time for your own inner revolution. And we can look at someone else and be like, I want to be where she is, but you're on your own timeline, in your own blueprint, with your own dharma. So you're going to live it out. If you trust the niggles along the way, it will evolve into where you're supposed to go. But I think I was in a conversation with you in a group a little while ago about how I released a single mum label that I was holding on so tight to. And that was so constricted in like, see me, validate me. I've done this. And it was not coming from divine masculine. It was actually coming from my immature masculine, who's like, yeah, see, I've got this. I don't need anybody. But what it actually did was completely shut my intimacy levels off from myself, from other people, because it was like, you can get this close.
Yeah.
You can be to this point. Any further, it's like I gave them the bird, F off. Like, whereas now it's like, no, you're fully welcomed into my space, because I know I've got me and I'm integrating both. Yeah.
And that's beautiful what you said there. I just did some work recently about some of my own like little stories of memories of like hiding and doing these things. And I wrote a post about it quite a while ago. It was called Little Girl Hiding Under the Table. And I used to do this thing when I was little where I would hide under the table. Like I'd run. If I'd done something wrong, I'd get under the table because mum couldn't get me there. And then adult brain, I go, oh my goodness, I'm hiding under the table. She's going to know that I've done something wrong now. So she's going to go find it, and then I'm still going to get it. And it was just an emotional thing of like connecting in with, what did that actually mean to me? Like, what meanings did I create from that? What did I tell myself about that? Which was, you're never going to be perfect. You're never going to get it right because you're always going to get it wrong. And that the table was safe, that hiding was safe. And I can't actually do the work that I do in the world if I'm hiding and I'm trying to be safe. And reframing that and going, actually, no, safety isn't the table. Safety isn't the thing that's hiding me. Safety comes from within me, that is in that inner knowing of like, it doesn't matter. What's happening out here is actually generally not about me. It's about them. And I'm safe because I am loving, caring, and knowing who I am, versus I've got to get that information from the people around me.
Yeah. And what a revelation that is, right? Because what I was going to mirror back to then is like, where now can you notice where you've been hiding under that table, and what does that represent for you? Because that's something that gets passed down. And another reason why I say we are our ancestors' wildest dreams, because with that level of awareness, we get to untangle something and be like, oh, that plays out here. And it plays out because it's familiar. And as a society of humans, we have an addiction to pain, and then it causes me pain and creates struggle and continues to tell me this limiting story. And now with this awareness, I get to go, oh, cool, I'm out from under the table. That's so cool.
That's exactly how I felt when I moved through the process. Like I'd moved through it's like, hello, there is no table. It is all an illusion.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a beautiful example too of how women, I like to use the analogy of the spiritual closet. Like, we're actual spiritual beings having a human experience. But even a year ago or 2 years ago, I probably wouldn't have said that so loud and clear, because I would have been afraid of what someone would think of me saying that. And so we hide parts of ourselves so that we feel safe. But in doing so, we're actually causing our own oppression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. There was something that happened that we created meaning out of it, and then we become the oppressor of ourselves from the moment on, and we continue to put that on ourselves
Continuously. There was a couple of months ago that I love shower floor moments, so I'm open to share. Like, the shower is a beautiful space for deep healing, and I was like, what is this? And being in mind body therapy, the body for me is the tool, it's the bridge. So in order to hold my work, I must make sure I'm checking in with mine. And there was just like so much stagnant, heavy energy in my body. And I was like, okay, cool. oh, what is this? You're avoiding going into there. So I just had a shower and put on this playlist, which ended up being a beautiful playlist to take women through a breathwork series later on. But first, it did it through myself. And of all the things, because obviously I've been in this work for a long time, this memory popped up at the very end. And it was of a conversation that I'd had with a teacher in year 11 at school, and what he had said to me and what I made it mean. And I was like, oh no. And I even tried to make it wrong. Like, it can't be that. It can't be that. And then I thought about how that situation has played out in my business and career from that moment, because what he said to me was, Tara, this may be the only opportunity this girl ever gets. The votes are so close. Just everybody in the school knows that you're going to succeed no matter what. He had no idea what would happen or be my experience in 6 months' time, which was the catalyst for my healing journey. But I was like, I've always looked at what did happen 6 months later in terms of trauma and abuse as the thing that's held me back. But in factual fact, there's certain elements to what he said that really was still stuck in me, so that I would succeed to a point. I would celebrate and push other people's success before my own. I was like, yeah, that gets to go. Good Lord. Yeah, I just think it's fascinating, and how that little conversation with that teacher, which was probably only 3 minutes, had continued to play out, just like you're hiding under the table.
And we all have moments like this, and it can be something like big, and we tend to go for like the big things. It has to be this big thing, but actually quite often it's just those little things, that little sleight of hand where somebody has said something, they've probably never meant anything by it at all. They just said it, or it just slipped out, or you interpreted it in a way that was not their intention, but it's like you've hung on to that for like dear life, and then created this life around it, which, it's not creating your life around truth of who you are. It's creating, this life around illusion of who you think you're allowed to be, or what you're allowed to have, and the beliefs that you've created, or the meaning that you've given to that one little thing.
Yeah, because we're like meaning making machines. What just came through for me then is, I love that. I can't think of the word or what it's called. It's got Oprah in it. It's a children's Disney movie, but she's like this oracle, Oprah, and they're saving their father through this blip, but he's in this planet called It, which is fear and darkness. And exactly, like, it's such a metaphor for life. If you want to feed it and you want to buy into it and believe that you don't have power over it, then that one little story that you made have meaning and implanted fear as a seed in your body somewhere is just going to manifest and grow until you choose to take the power back from it.
Yeah.
Well,
the memory that's consistently coming back to me when we're talking about this is like being in like grade 11, 12 English, and never being able to get it right, because English frustrated me because there was no right answer. Like math, score. It's all opinion based. If the teacher liked it, then you maybe got a better score. There was no like, if you do this, that it's going to be right. And I couldn't figure it out. And my teacher said to me, you know what, it doesn't matter. You're never going to be a writer anyway. And now I'm in the moment of like writing my book, and I'm like having to dance with like, this thing where I'm going, actually, you know what? I write every day. Every day I write. And, getting to pull that out and go, you know what? That was your opinion of what I get to do. It's not actually the truth, but I made it my truth for a really long time.
Yeah. Well, I'm so proud of you for letting that one go, because I can't wait to read your book.
I can't wait to read it either.
That's the best, isn't it? And you're like, I love what I write. I love what comes through. Yeah.
Something I'd love to explore a little bit more with you in this conversation is more around this mother wound of, because I heard you do a talk quite recently, and you were talking about how, we hold this more with our mothers than we do with our fathers. Like, what is that story about?
And I mean, that's going to be personal to someone's experience, but from a therapeutic model and having experience with all my clients, it's always, if the father is brought up, or there's some big audacious, trauma even that was induced by the father, then it's like, that's not really a thing. And if, as an example, a lot of my pain has come from, not being heard by my mother. It wasn't actually linked to the trauma that I was speaking of, which sure, it's come with its own mind body release and what's needed to be addressed and processed. But the deeper stuff is, oh, you didn't hear me, and I was silenced. And it's not making mothers or my mum wrong by any sense of the means, because that came from her silence, right? And then that came from my grandmother's silence, and it was just a way of being like, how dare you say what just happened? Shh, hush. And I think because, at the core of a woman's empowerment, when we pull it back to a real human perspective, is the first wound and scar that we ever have is our umbilical cord. It's cut off straight from our mum, and she shares the other half of that within her internal system. And so it's the wound of all wounds. And emotionally, that connection, and it puts a lot of pressure on us as mums. This is why I'm like really mindful of how it's shared. I think it's absolutely beautiful, and we get to have awareness and know that we're never meant to be perfect. No one's going to be perfect. We've all got stuff we've got to learn and grow through. But because of that, it makes it almost easier, especially for women, to address what's there with their mum, because we see pieces of ourselves in her, in us continually, and that's triggering. That's why, from a feminine perspective, we are our ancestors' wildest dreams, because we do see our mother in ourselves, and that's often the parts that we go, or there's pieces that, I know for me through the last layers of my healing journey around this 6 months ago, washing, and there are certain things that my mum, little tiny intrinsic things, nails it. I'd rejected having any of that in my realm because I didn't want it to be when in actual fact, now I embrace that aspect of her, and I can see it with like, you're a legend, lady, and I need to adopt some of that of you in me, because you are in me, and I can accept that now rather than reject it. So yeah, it's kind of like, it's such a gray zone, but I think because it's so emotionally connected, it's why it's so much more prevalently there. And then it gives an access point for, if someone does have father wounding, to go into that. But the father wounding then goes into patriarchal conditioning. Whereas when we become an awakened woman, for me, I personally believe if you're not willing to look at the relationship with your mother, even if you say it's sunshine and rainbows, then you're avoiding part of your heroine awakenings journey, because you've been born down a line of women, and that's a part of who you are, and we can't spiritually bypass that.
Yeah. And I see that happening a lot with my clients at times, where they go, oh no, but my mum did the best job that she could. I knew that she loved me. I knew all these things. And I'm like, you delving into your hurts and your pain around this doesn't make her any less amazing.
No.
It doesn't make her any less wonderful, and so on. She can be the most loving mother on the earth, who doted on you and gave you all the things that a mother should give you.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll end up with something because she didn't tie your shoe on that one day, and you felt left behind because everybody was moving on and your shoe wasn't tied up. Like,
you felt smothered and you didn't feel like you had the freedom to be more expressed. Like there's going to be something, and it's not making them right or wrong. And I love to use my own example, where my son's first big birthday party with his kindy class, I made a rainbow plate of fruit and veg. He was mortified, absolutely mortified. And that was 4 years ago. And every year since, he was like, Mum, please tell me you don't have broccoli on a plate. Like, please, Mum. And I don't doubt that that's something later on. He'll be like, yeah, Mum didn't let me eat. I wasn't allowed to eat this, and I wasn't allowed to eat that. And he'll get to some point on his journey and he'll be like, yeah, Mum, look at this can of Coke that you never let me have. And that's going to be part of his polarization, to then go, I'm 25 now, and I can see from what I've learned myself later on, she had a few things going on for her there, and that makes sense. Thanks, Mum.
Yep.
But that's going to be met with light and dark. Yeah.
For sure. And I want to add to that, because for my own kids, like, we'd done like the GAPS diet probably 7 years ago, thinking back to the time, like, 7 years ago. So we'd had like this whole year where we didn't have anything, like no sugar, no, rubbish. There was no potatoes, there was no wheat, there was no all of this stuff. And we were like the healthiest that we'd ever been. And then we had this journey in between where I'd, been on life support and had to rebuild my own body and do all these things, that the diet just kind of fell off to the wayside and we just had to survive. And then now we're back on the diet because my children came to me and they said, Mom, can we go back on this?
That's incredible.
For me, that's like a special moment where I'm cheering on the inside going, I must have done something right, because now they recognize that, how badly the other stuff made them feel, that they just want to eat that way now, which is for me like, oh, my heart is singing.
Yeah, that's incredible. And that's a new level of a conditioning, right? And programming that you've created for them to then continue to pass on. And that's what we're here to do. That's amazing.
Yeah. When, for me in my work, that's one of the things that I say to my mothers is that this is challenging, changing your child's diet, but you're rewriting their future.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're literally, every time you're sitting there and you're saying, this is what's for dinner, and they're like, Mom, this sucks. Mm-hmm. You're rewriting their future. Like you're providing them with food that's going to let them be more of who they are, versus food that's going to, suppress who they are, that's going to block the things that need to come through, that's going to, create health conditions. Like you're rewriting their future for them. Mm-hmm. And while you're doing that, you're also rewriting your future too, and your connection with them moving forward.
And you're creating like a clearer channel. I'm always about creating a clearer channel. I love that. I just have this memory I'd love to share it because, emotional intelligence and all mindfulness and meditation is a huge part of my work. And there was a moment, again, my divine son, he's so wise. We were at my grandparents' place. There was like 10 people at the dinner table. And he goes, hey guys, because this is what we do at the dinner table. What are you grateful for? Let's go around the table and name 3 things we're grateful for today and tell me what your highlight and low light of your day was. And they all looked and went like, what? And I was like, that's a great idea, darling. You start. And the adults, my grandma's like, oh, that's amazing. I would never think, And I'm like, yeah, cool. Let's do it and see how it feels and how uncomfortable that made them. But he was this beacon of invitation to be, and he goes, so I'm grateful that I get to sit here and have a meal with all of you. I'm grateful for my family and that we're sitting in this beautiful home. And I was like, oh, right? Like, cool. And he gets to have that as an anchor. And for him to bring that up with no, like, hey, mate, how about this? It was just like this random idea of his to like make adults feel super uncomfortable by sharing what they're grateful for. I'm like, yeah, cool. I'm doing my bit. I'm creating a new way.
Yeah.
Not because the way I was brought up was wrong. It's just a new time, and that's what evolution is.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I love that. Oh my gosh, my heart would so be singing if I was sitting at the table and that was happening.
And their faces, they're, oh, good Lord. They're like...
And it's this magical thing where adults kind of have to go along with what the children say. Like, if an adult had brought that up, they maybe would have gone, yeah, nah.
It would have been like, Tara, keep your woo-woo to yourself. Yeah.
But because he brought it up, like it was just this, magical opportunity to do things and say things that maybe sometimes as an adult we don't get to do.
Yeah. And I want to go back to what you asked me, because what I have here now is like, it's also when I say oppression, and I just mean, over time, women haven't had resources like we have now. So like what we were saying about that woman's mum and our mums, they didn't work, or they had to do all of the mothering roles and nothing was shared. But also, it's easier to be looked at the mother wound because it's all around us. And we're avoiding it because we have a loyalty to our mum. But it's interesting how many mothers die in Disney movies. It's interesting, and that creates an instant separation and a wounding for a child to watch that film and the mum died. And then she's brought up by the evil stepmom. Like,
yeah.
And then her conditioning is brought to her through the evil stepmom. Like through the program, we actually go through some of the ways those stories are replicated in different cultures and what it actually does to us from a subconscious level. There's just this wounding. And then we get to Mother's Day and it's all like celebrate the mum. But maybe you don't want to celebrate the mum, but then you feel like you have to so that you fit into society. So you go and buy the flowers and the card that says what you really don't feel. And here you go. I love you. Like, I wish I felt like this. I really do. But maybe today you didn't,
Yeah.
And my father has said that to me my whole life. He's like, Father's Day, Mother's Day, blah, 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 Christmas. It's just a commercial thing. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Christmas and birthdays. And I love a good celebration and making everyone come together. But that's it too, right? Making. It shouldn't have to be made, and it shouldn't have to be this big audacious thing. And it's become this like money-making machine that has a real effect on our subconscious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. There's so many things that are pinging for me there, because like the amount of times I've gone to get Mother's Day cards and I'm like, none of these say the real thing.
They don't. I've thought about creating that.
A lie. But also too, something that I've said quite recently, especially playing with this idea of like cultural eating and what we eat at celebrations, and it being about the food and actually less about the health. And one of the things that I said quite recently was that if your family can't come around the dinner table and just eat soup, then there's probably something wrong with your family.
Yeah, I love that.
Because if they have to come only because there's like this food and this food and this food and this food on it, then maybe the connections need actual work, because we want to come to the dinner table to connect with each other, not just to put toxins in our bodies. Like, what if we came and we actually nourished each other at the table with food and with our communion with each other?
Yeah. And it's the same with friendships, right? Oh, let's go and have cake and a coffee.
Yeah.
Like, why can't we just go sit in the park and have actually nothing? Just bring your water.
Just enjoy time to actually be together.
Yeah, that we look for, that would be so much of a huge part of your work. We do look to food to be the thing that brings us together, like that
the vehicle.
The vehicle, and it's not necessarily nourishing. I'm just on a call, sweetheart. Can you be quiet with that balloon, please? Thank you.
This is just real life.
Real life. Real life. I was watching her. I'm like, oh, good Lord, do not pop a balloon in my face.
My daughter's coming in. She's talked to me. I went on mute for a few seconds there.
Oh, you did good. I didn't even notice.
Oh, well, good. I slid that in there then. So we've got 10 minutes left. I would really love for you to be able to share with my community what you do and where they might find you, and, you know, any of the offerings that are currently available, so that they can come and like dance with this idea even more.
Thanks, beautiful. So yeah, I have a program that kicks off, I think it's the 5th of December. The group will open on the 1st of December, and it's called Her Revolution. So that's a 7-week journey for women to be in a group healing environment. And I say healing because I believe we're on this planet right now to heal, and healing is transformation, and it's a way for us to reveal new ways of being. And so that's a beautiful 7-week, circle-like healing journey where I will hold space and teach tools, and we will go through processes together, but then you'll also have space for the conversation, because a lot of healing, especially for women, and I believe men will get there too, is in actually just hearing and speaking. And through that, being witnessed, seen and heard and held in a reverent way, like things just shift and change. So that's one of my most excited things that I've got going on at the moment. There's also Soul Driven, which launches tomorrow, which is a 11-week journey with myself and Lauren. And that's all about letting your creativity come alive. So my podcast is called Muse. I've dabbled and created many businesses and been in many different projects, and I've never made that wrong about myself, because I know I'm here for my own dharma. So that's a full container for you to get super clear on what's next for you to bring it into 2021. And then I always have my one-on-one spaces available. So coaching, mentoring programs with me. Coaching's not really the word, because it's healing. It's a therapeutic model that we go into, but that also then on the other side, I find it really beautiful and interesting that then women are like, I want to go and create, because they've made space. They've really got to know themselves. I'm a beautiful mirror and space to be like, yeah, here you are. That's always available. I've got a couple of spots left for 3 months journeys at the moment that will take you into next year, or random one-on-ones are always there too. Yeah.
Sorry, I was on mute then accidentally, not on purpose this time. But as you were speaking there, one of the things that came to me was, the reason that we need to delve into these things is that we've lost some of our natural processes. Like the story that comes to me straight away is the story of the women in Africa. where they, used to every day go to the river and they would wash clothes. And then suddenly this village got electricity. And when they got electricity, they got washing machines. And the women no longer went to the river to wash their clothes together. And now they were separated into their homes, and the actual villages became depressed.
Yeah.
And we've had this situation happen for us where the things that would naturally have brought us together, like washing our clothes at the river and just naturally engaging in conversation and connecting as a village, we're now so much more isolated because we have washing machines, we have dishwashers, we have all of these different things, and we're not necessarily connecting. And this is where what I see you doing is holding space and creating those containers to come to the well and wash.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Back into those relationships that we have deleted because we've become so independent and insular versus connective.
And I love that you've just brought that up and that you referred to Africa because, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, I was an ambassador and part of a charity called One Girl. And so we did speaking and we created fundraising campaigns to educate girls in Africa. And it was a beautiful representation of where I am now, and actually why a huge part why Her Revolution has been born, which is the Mother Wound Project, because I got to a point in witnessing in myself that I could speak in front of thousands of people about what was going on in Africa, but there was no way I would get up and say what was going on in the background of my life or in modern day society. And I was like, so am I really, yeah, okay, cool. We've got 300 girls educated this year. That is making an impact on their life. But how is that impacting me aside from validating me, saying, yay, good job, you. Like, good job, you helped somebody. And I'm not just crediting what we did there. And so I asked in this room of powerful women what brought them to be there doing what we were doing. And there was big, bold stories that connected to the experiences of the women in Africa that we hadn't yet expressed in our own modern society. And the village is imperative for us to come back together, and it's also imperative to our healing, because the reason we're not in the village is because our masculine's in the front driver's seat, and we women know how to nurture and nourish, and it feels really uncomfortable. And a lot of women will come into my space, be like, I've just been drawn to come here, and I always get so excited because I'm like, yes, here we go. And they'll be like, I don't know why I'm crying, and I don't know what you just did, but I'm like, it's just the intention and the power of like you being welcomed into your own vulnerability. I haven't done anything. You've just allowed yourself to see yourself and then be witnessed by other women. And we can say, oh, I don't need that. Every woman on some cellular level yearns to be in a village and have a bunch of cheerleaders beside her, not comparing, not celebrating, like, and all of that. That's part of the Her Revolution, because we've been programmed to do all of those things because it removes us from our embodied feminine leadership, which is why the Dalai Lama said the world will be saved by the Western woman. We've got that power, and it's our time now to see that that's not just this big, audacious, loud thing. It's actually us being who we truly are. So then, yeah, sure, now I will go out and continue to educate girls in Africa, but I do it from a space of, you know what, those traumas still happen here in Australia. Sexual abuse still happens here in Australia. And I was too afraid to use my voice and say that before then.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's embodied healing and change, because I'm willing to be it myself first.
Yeah. And I love how you were talking about, your voice may tremble, but you've still got to use it.
Oh, and your pits will be sweaty and you'll probably do a few nervous poos, but like for real, it's not all pretty, right? Growth is far from pretty.
I love it. I love it. I want to thank you so much. We've had heaps of people jumping on and watching us live. There's some yeses in there. I will definitely be putting some links into the comments for those in Facebook that are viewing this, and the same on YouTube, and the same in my podcast for those who are listening it in all those different spaces. So I will put those in the show notes for everybody to access. And again, thank you for being in this space with me. It's been such a delicious conversation.
It's been fun. It's a great way to start the morning. Thank you.
I know, right?
So cool. I really appreciate it.
Great. So I'm going to say goodbye to everybody in Facebook that's watching us, and see you next time.
Bye.